The second FNAF movie is coming out this year, and personally, one of the things I'm looking forward to is seeing Mangle, one of the most iconic characters in this franchise, on the big screen. Partly because there's a possibility that we'll be seeing Mangle before she was mangled. If you've been keeping up with discussion in the fanbase, you may see people refer to this pre-Mangle character as Funtime Foxy, which may lead you to seeing other people responding with, "No, that would be Toy Foxy, not Funtime Foxy, who is from Sister Location." Those people responding are technically wrong, or at least confused about why people call Mangle Funtime Foxy. Most FNAF fans know that FNAF 2's new animatronics are labeled as Toy animatronics in FNAF 2's Custom Night. Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie, and Toy Chica. Phone Guy gives the reason to how the Foxy animatronic became Mangle, stating that the animatronic was specifically meant to interact with young kids, who then instead decided to break it. Rather than repeating the task of repairing Foxy after every shift, the staff simply made the playful act of taking the animatronic apart and putting it back together as part of the attraction for the kids. If Mangle was just another new animatronic in the FNAF 2 pizzeria, then it would make sense for her to be called Toy Foxy, right? Scott even labeled Mangle as Toy Foxy in the FNAF 2 source code. However, in the 2015 trailer for FNAF World, the adventure version's the intact Mangle was instead called Funtime Foxy. And this was still the case when the game came out in early 2016. According to Scott at the time, FNAF 4 was meant to be the last canon FNAF game, and FNAF World was meant to be the last game, period. This changed later on, but this is what Scott stated in late 2015, and his continuation of the series was only in response to the lack of satisfaction with both FNAF 4 and FNAF World. So even though there did end up being a version of Foxy in Sister Location named Funtime Foxy, this adventure Funtime Foxy wasn't a tease for that game. Sister Location's Funtime animatronics did not exist during the development of FNAF World. Plus, adventure Funtime Foxy is clearly meant to be the intact Mangle, as she has her hook, like in the FNAF 2 teaser image, and her loading screen text reads, "It wasn't meant to last," clearly referring to Mangle's broken state. Repaired Mangle, being referred to as Funtime Foxy, even carried over into official merch for the franchise, which is slightly confusing considering that merch for Funtime Foxy from Sister Location also exists. Same name with different branding. Perhaps when Scott decided to develop Sister Location, he simply decided to reuse the Funtime label. Maybe we can call the Mangle one Pirate Funtime Foxy because it has a hook and he's in a cove, and the Funtime Foxy in Sister Location doesn't really have a pirate aesthetic. He's more of a showman, like a ringleader in a circus. So maybe we can call him Showman Funtime Foxy. Those have never been used as official names, but I think those labels work for avoiding confusion. Now, I want you to forget about Sister Location for a bit. For now, I want you to only think about mid to late 2015, when only FNAF 1 through 4 were released and FNAF World was being developed. I want you to think about why Scott would name the intact Mangle Funtime Foxy during this time. FNAF 4 had a story that Scott had said no one had really understood correctly at the time. "I guess people assumed I filled the game with random Easter eggs this time. I didn't." One of the biggest debates in the community related to FNAF 4 was based around the confusion over if the minigame cutscene segments took place in 1987 or 1983. The game's teasers implied it would be 1987, and in the game, there were also references to the FNAF 2 animatronics, who, as far as we knew, were created in 1987. But we were also visiting Fredbear's Family Diner, a location that Phone Guy states was closed for years in 1987. An Easter egg involving a Fredbear and Friends cartoon series showed the copyright date of 1983. Scott would eventually confirm that these minigames took place in 1983 via Sister Location, through a comment on Reddit in 2017, and then again in the week before interactive novel. But those wouldn't be until years later. Just know that in 2015, this is what fans were confused about. Scott tried giving people story hints about the game on his website that same year. One of them being, in the FNAF 4 minigame, why would the tiny toy Chica be missing her beak? While fans don't entirely know the exact answer to this question, it did point out the fact that these tiny toys in FNAF 4 were similar to the toy animatronics that appear in FNAF 2, as Toy Chica's beak is removable in both animatronic and literal toy form. I interpret this inclusion of the tiny toys to be the origin of the toy animatronics. As in, these were toys made of the original Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica with very stylized designs in 1983. Then, in 1987, when Fazbear Entertainment decided to make new animatronics for their grand reopening, they based their designs off of those toys from years prior, hence the reason they're called toy animatronics. If the toy figures were popular with kids, then it would make sense that the company would try to match those designs in order to bring in as many customers as possible. But we also see a Mangle toy. That wouldn't make sense under this idea. For one, Toy, or Funtime Foxy's design, is way too different from the original Foxy to just be an action figure with a stylized design. And also, this toy appearing like this, with the extra endoskeleton head, would mean that it is a toy based off the Mangle attraction as we see it in FNAF 2. But if that only happened in 1987, 4 years after the FNAF 4 minigames, then this toy shouldn't exist. Phone Guy's explanation of Mangle existing only makes sense within the context of 1987 and the FNAF 2 pizzeria. Right? Well, not necessarily. I think that it's very unlikely, but perhaps the Mangle animatronic itself existed prior to 1987. Phone Guy says,
they tried to remake Foxy, you know? They thought the first one was too scary, so they redesigned him to be more kid-friendly and put him in Kids Cove to keep the toddlers entertained, you know? But kids these days just can't keep their hands to themselves. The staff literally had to put Foxy back together at the end of every shift. So eventually they just stopped trying and left him as some kind of take-apart, put-back-together attraction. Now he's just a mess of parts. I think the employees refer to him as just the Mangle.
Even though Phone Guy is undoubtedly recording this in 1987, there is nothing here 100% confirming the idea that the events he's talking about took place that same year. He could be speaking in retrospect, speaking about events that took place months or even a few years prior. You know, he could also be lying, as Phone Guy often does for the company. He's an unreliable narrator. FNAF World is non-canon, but it's also very meta. Scott admitted that he tried to tie it to a canon game.
I should have just done something that was obviously for fun and not tried to somehow tie it in to a canon game.
In 2015, there was confusion over how Mangle could appear in FNAF 4 if it took place in 1983. Scott has said that he likes to use games to clarify confusion about games he made previously. Consider then, Scott naming repaired Mangle Funtime Foxy was a hint towards the canon story. It was him hinting that Mangle wasn't originally made as part of the other toy animatronics, and establishing that she had actually been created years prior. We know that FREDDY'S was opened in 1983. That would give us a couple months of time for Fazbear Entertainment to realize that Foxy was too scary for kids, attempt to redesign him, and introduce him as a new animatronic, Funtime Foxy. Then, the kids would break that animatronic, and in response, Fazbear Entertainment would make that Funtime Foxy's brand identity as an attraction and as merch. If it's hard to believe that all of that happened in 1983 between Freddy's opening and by the time the FNAF 4 minigames happened, then it may have happened at least a year earlier. Even though Freddy's opened in 1983, it is still possible that these characters existed at attractions prior to that year. Either way, in 1983 or after, Fazbear Entertainment reintroduced Foxy, or perhaps since Freddy's was a chain franchise, the Mangle animatronic was only at one location. No matter what, in 1983, Funtime Foxy, and then Mangle, a take-apart, put-back-together attraction, was present or had been present at some Fazbear-owned establishment, a failed rebrand of Foxy, now relegated to just a spin-off, which would also explain why Foxy was was still an attraction at the original Freddy's, where the missing children's incident took place in 1985. Phone Guy saying that Foxy was too scary for kids would also fit within the context of the FNAF 4 minigames, as Foxy is the older brother's character of choice to scare the bite victim. In 1987, during FNAF 2, Fazbear Entertainment would then reintroduce Mangle as part of the toy animatronics, probably due to their similar aesthetics. It would also explain why there are no intact Funtime Foxy drawings or posters in the FNAF 2 pizzeria, because Mangle was already Mangle when it opened. Except there is an alternative theory that explains the Mangle toy in FNAF 4. Earlier, I said that it wouldn't make sense for a Funtime Foxy toy to be based directly off of Foxy, as the designs are just too different. However, I was ignoring the fact that Fazbear Entertainment has been shown to make very gimmicky spin-off variants of their characters all the time. And in real life, a lot of children's franchises in the 1980s were very focused on creating as much merchandise as possible. A popular trend in the 80s and 90s was companies making baby or kid versions of popular intellectual properties. That could be what the Tiny Toy line and the Funtime Foxy toy were meant to be, which lines up with what Phone Guy says about the toy animatronics.
So the company decided to just go in a whole new direction and make them super kid-friendly to keep the toddlers entertained, you know.
If the Funtime Foxy toy came before the Mangle animatronic in FNAF 2, then perhaps the gimmick of that toy was that it was designed for kids to take apart and put back together, which is a popular gimmick for kids' toys in real life. That would also give new meaning to FNAF World saying Funtime Foxy wasn't meant to last, because the toy was designed to be broken. Then, in 1987, the new Foxy animatronic would just look like a life-sized version of the toy, so the kids think that they're supposed to take it apart. Funtime is a common and obvious phrase to use in branding and marketing for kids' toys, so much so that an actual toy manufacturer tried to make a trademark infringement claim against Funko, which has the official FNAF license for using the term Funtime in FNAF merchandise. My point is that Scott used the name Funtime Foxy in FNAF World to really drive home the idea that this character existed as a children's toy and that it was a variant of Foxy. So, simply calling her Toy Foxy wouldn't make sense because it's not a direct adaptation of the character from animatronic to toy form. But then, why? Why did Scott include this Mangle toy in FNAF 4 in the first place? I can't guarantee that anything of what I'm saying is right, but I think the answer is that Scott simply wanted us to think that FNAF 4 was in 1987 with the teasers and with the references to the toys, at least until fans considered the contradictions and found the 1983 Easter egg. Scott did something similar with Five Nights 2, implying through marketing that it was going to be a sequel to the first game, but multiple points in that game contradict that idea, and by the end, the reveal is made. FNAF 2 is in 1987, before the first game, establishing for fans that the Freddy's franchise has a more complicated history than we thought from the first game. Scott was expanding the world that he had introduced in Five Nights at Freddy's 1, and I think he was trying to do that again with FNAF 4, trying to expand the world, now establishing characters we thought were new in 1987, were actually a few years older, which is in character for Fazbear Entertainment. They totally would reuse old animatronics and designs, and claim that they were new and improved for marketing. It's just another reminder that we can't always trust what Fazbear Entertainment says. Another purpose for the inclusion of the toy Mangle and tiny toys in FNAF 4 is that they connect the bite victim to Happiest Day. As I've explained in my Happiest Day video, FNAF World confirms that the FNAF 4 minigames are connected to the FNAF 3 minigames. Both sets of minigames have visual parallels with each other. However, if Scott hadn't included some form of Mangle or Toy Chica, or both playable characters, in the FNAF 3 minigames, then these connections wouldn't be obvious. Scott had to imply that the animatronics from 1987 were based off of toys from 1983. Even future games keep this idea of Mangle existing in 1983. The Curse of Dreadbear DLC for Help Wanted is based around Fall Fest 1983. In the Trick or Treat minigame, there's masks for Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Mangle. A Balloon Boy mask is also there, but there's nothing in the series contradicting that Balloon Boy existed before 1987. Like the puppet, he was very likely a reused character from an older location. Okay, but now we can consider Sister Location. Perhaps Funtime Foxy and Sister Location, and maybe even Funtime Freddy, were also based on a toy line that already existed in universe. In reference to Circus Baby, Elizabeth says,
"Didn't you make her just for me?"
If Will made the Funtime animatronics for Elizabeth, then maybe he based one or all of them off of her favorite toys. In a Steam post, Scott referred to Helpy as the little toy Funtime Freddy. Fans have assumed that Helpy is based off of Funtime Freddy, but based on the appearance of Helper in the Secret of the Mimic trailer, it appears that this design existed in other forms before it was made into an animatronic. The concept of animatronics being made as life-sized versions of toy figures is also present within the continuity of the novel series. In the Twisted Ones, the main characters find themselves in a Freddy's location. There, they see posters of the characters that seem to evoke the appearance of the toy animatronics from the games. They then go on to say, "If you were a little kid and you saw the cute commercials and saw these posters and toys and all that stuff, then I think that's exactly what they would have looked like." They're referring to a method that Will used to lure and capture kids using his own animatronics, which is exactly what the animatronics from Sister Location were made to do. Will could have made them look like kids' toys to lure kids closer. We don't have a lot of evidence to suggest that William built the toy animatronics from FNAF 2, so them being based on toy figures was probably done with slightly more innocent intentions. But essentially, according to my theory, the pirate Funtime Foxy from FNAF 2 and the showman Funtime Foxy from Sister Location are two separate animatronics, but they share a name because both were inspired by the same toy. So the next time someone tells you not to call Mangle Funtime Foxy, remind them of who had the name first. Thanks for watching. Hey, thanks for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Let me know why you think Mangle was in the FNAF 4 minigames. This video was actually available early over on my Patreon. On my page, you can select different monthly pledges that give you access to certain benefits, such as your name at the end of videos and early content. It would seriously mean a lot to me. And if you can't pledge on Patreon, then hey, consider liking and subscribing. Thanks again, and I hope you're looking forward to more videos from me.